My brother told everyone I was a parasite who'd never move out. I smiled and packed my bags. 2 years later, they begged me to come home after they found out. My brother Ryan always had a way of filling a room: loud, charming, successful. He was the golden boy with a six-figure tech job, a glossy apartment downtown, and a wardrobe full of tailored suits. At family gatherings, everyone listened when he talked. I, on the other hand, was usually refilling the drinks or clearing plates before anyone asked. The night everything changed started like any other holiday dinner. Mom made her famous meatloaf, Dad was 2 beers in before the salad hit the table, and Ryan was regaling everyone with stories of his recent business trip to Dubai. The room hummed with polite laughter, clinking cutlery, and the occasional dramatic pause he used to soak in his own charisma. I sat quietly, poking at my food. At the time, I was 27, living at home, working out freelance gigs, and trying to figure out what the hell I wanted to do with my life. The room smelled like rosemary and roast potatoes, but to me, it reeked of unspoken judgment. Then, mid-bite, Ryan turned to me with that cocky smirk that always seemed to follow me like a shadow. "You know," he said, swirling his wine like some B-list sommelier, "it's impressive how resilient you are, living like a parasite all these years." The fork slipped from my hand and clattered against the plate. I stared at him, thinking I misheard. But then he turned to the others. "I mean, really, Mom and Dad should charge you rent. At this point, you've basically evolved into part of the furniture." Everyone laughed. Even Dad. Mom didn't say a word, just dabbed her mouth with her napkin and looked down. That was the moment. The moment something inside me snapped, not loud or messy, but quiet. Like a door closing. I didn't yell. I didn't defend myself. I just smiled, stood up, and walked out of the dining room. Upstairs, I packed my duffel bag. I moved like I was floating, like my body had already accepted the decision my mind hadn't fully processed yet. I left a note on my pillow. "Thanks for everything. Take care." Then I walked out the front door and disappeared. I didn't go far that night, just far enough to feel invisible. A crumpled $50 and a half tank of gas got me to a rundown motel on the edge of town, the kind of place that smelled like bleach and regret. I lay on the stiff mattress staring at the popcorn ceiling, playing that dinner scene over and over in my mind. Ryan's words echoed, sharper than they had sounded at the table. Parasite. Furniture. I didn't cry. Not that night. Instead, I opened my laptop, an old, overheating clunker I'd almost pawned 2 months earlier, and started Googling. I'd always had a thing for puzzles, logic, patterns. I'd done some HTML in high school, messed around with a Python course once but never stuck with it. That night, I made a decision. I was going to learn everything. The next morning, I found a 24/7 diner with free Wi-Fi and a patient waitress named Linda who didn't blink when I ordered nothing but coffee for 6 hours straight. I parked there every day. Code Academy, free tutorials, YouTube deep dives, I devoured it all. HTML, CSS, JavaScript, Python, SQL. I turned the empty hours into work. No distractions, no Netflix, no family guilt. Just caffeine and code. At night, I crashed at motels, couch-surfed, even slept in my car once when I had to choose between food and a room. I'd never felt more alive. After 6 months, I landed my first paid gig on a freelance site. It was a tiny job, designing a landing page for a dog groomer in Minnesota, but when that $120 hit my account, I nearly cried in the bathroom stall of a gas station. That was the moment I knew I was never going back. Momentum is a funny thing. Once I had that first win, a measly landing page with Comic Sans headlines and a stock photo of a poodle, I couldn't stop. I took every gig I could find. Wedding websites, small business redesigns, glitchy Shopify stores, anything. I barely slept. I didn't have the luxury. My office was wherever I could find a plug and a table that didn't wobble. Diner booths, library corners, a 24-hour laundromat with surprisingly decent Wi-Fi. I lived off vending machine snacks and dollar tacos. I showered at gyms that offered free trials. My bank account was a seesaw, $300 one day, $17 the next, but it was mine. Every cent. By month 10, I wasn't just surviving, I was gaining clients. Repeat business. Word of mouth referrals. A yoga studio in Oregon told a custom jewelry maker in Arizona, who passed my name to a small real estate agency in Colorado. Each client added another brick to the foundation I was building. Then came the turning point. A client from San Francisco, a guy named Theo who ran an eco-sustainability blog, hired me to build a custom CMS for his expanding content network. It was more than I'd ever done. Complex. But I said yes, taught myself what I didn't know, and delivered early. He paid me $4,000. $4,000. More than I'd made in a month before. He also left a review that called me the most quietly brilliant developer I've ever worked with. That sentence hit harder than any insult Ryan had ever thrown at me. That review led to more clients, higher paying ones. Within 6 months, I had a full roster. I created a brand, registered an LLC, hired a part-time assistant named Layla. My inbox became a stream of opportunities. And then, just before the 2-year mark, I launched something of my own, a niche project management tool for small teams. I noticed the gap. Built it with every scrap of knowledge I'd earned. Marketed it with brutal precision. It exploded. By the end of that year, I had 5 employees, a top-floor penthouse downtown, and a matte black car Ryan used to dream about in high school taped to his bedroom wall. I never looked back. Until the phone rang. It was a Thursday afternoon. Sunny. Quiet. I was sipping a flat white in my penthouse kitchen, glass walls, slate countertops, the kind of view that made silence feel like wealth, when my phone rang. The caller ID just said, "Home." I hadn't seen that name light up my screen in almost 2 years. For a second I didn't move. Just stared at the screen like it might vanish if I blinked. But it didn't. So I answered. The voice on the other end was shakier than I remembered. "Hey. It's Ryan." I didn't say anything. Just listened. He cleared his throat. "Look. I know this is weird. And I wouldn't be calling if it wasn't serious." Still, I said nothing. "We lost the house," he blurted. "Mom and Dad, they didn't tell you, I guess. Dad's retirement went under. He got scammed. Their mortgage's been behind for months. And my startup, it crashed. Like, totally imploded. Investors pulled out. We're in debt. Serious debt." The silence between us stretched. I could almost hear the ghost of his laugh from that dinner, the word parasite slithering back into the air. "I know I messed up," he said finally. "But they're going to lose everything. And I don't have the means to help them. I thought maybe you could." That was Rich. The same guy who once called me a leech, now asking for my help. For a second, I wanted to laugh. But I didn't. Instead, I said, "Send me the address. I'll be there tomorrow." He exhaled. "Seriously? Thank you, man. Thank you?" I hung up without another word. Not out of cruelty, but because I already knew what I was going to do. The next morning, I pulled into the driveway in a car that didn't belong on that street. Matte black, low to the ground, humming like it knew it was the most expensive thing for miles. Their house looked smaller than I remembered. More fragile. The paint was peeling. The porch light hung at an angle like it had given up trying. Ryan opened the door before I even knocked. He looked thinner, older. Like someone had taken sandpaper to his confidence. "Hey," he said, forcing a smile. "You look different." I stepped past him without replying. Inside, the place was quiet. Too quiet. I remembered this room full of holiday noise, smells of gravy and green beans, laughter, usually his. Now, it smelled like mothballs and unpaid bills. Mom appeared in the hallway, eyes puffy. Dad stood beside her, arms crossed like he was waiting for me to explain myself. I didn't. I let the silence do the talking. Ryan motioned to the kitchen table. "Let's sit." We did. I listened. I let them list the debts, the foreclosure date, the missed payments, the tears. I didn't interrupt once. Finally, Ryan leaned forward. Look, we wouldn't ask if we weren't desperate. You've clearly made something of yourself. And I know I said some things. Parasite, I said quietly. His face crumpled a little. Yeah. That. You're not here for an apology, I said. You're here because you have no one else. Silence. I stood up and pulled out a folder. I already contacted the bank. I bought the house. Full price. No debt left. Mom gasped. Ryan's eyes widened. Even Dad blinked like he'd just been slapped with sunlight. But, I added, it's not your house anymore. What does that mean? Ryan asked. It means, I said slowly, you're welcome to stay, as tenants. I'll draw up a lease. First and last month's rent due immediately. If you need help finding jobs, I have some positions available. Dad's voice cracked. You want me to work for you? No, I said. I want Ryan to. Ryan looked up. What kind of job? Customer support. Entry level. You'll answer emails. Wear a headset. Start at the bottom. He opened his mouth to argue, then closed it again. I slid the lease across the table. Think it over. You've got 48 hours. Then I walked out the door, leaving my old life, and the new terms, behind me. 48 hours came and went without a word. Then, on the morning of the third day, I got an email. Not a phone call, not a text, just a simple message from Ryan's personal Gmail, subject line. We'll take the lease. Attached was a signed PDF. Below it, a short message. I'll report to wherever you need me. Thank you for keeping them off the street. There was no apology. No warmth. Just a transaction. I liked it that way. I forwarded his information to Layla, my assistant, with a note. New hire. Training starts Monday. Watch him. That week, Ryan showed up at my downtown office, head down, wearing a suit that didn't quite fit anymore. He looked like a man who'd been gutted and sewn back together with thread made of humility. I gave him a cubicle. No office, no nameplate, just a gray box with a cheap chair and a stack of onboarding papers. He started answering support tickets for our software, a job so monotonous it made time feel like molasses. Password resets, bug complaints, customers who didn't know how to open an email. The same brother who once bragged about scaling ideas was now explaining to a retiree how to change her profile picture. And the best part? He was good at it. He was polite. Patient. He had no choice. At home, my parents tiptoed through their new lives. Rent payments came in on time, barely. Mom tried to bake once, leaving a box of muffins at my office with a note that read, "Thought you might like these." I left them in the break room. Didn't take one. Dad kept his pride intact by staying silent. He didn't work, didn't visit. Just paid his share of rent with social security checks and avoided my eyes whenever I stopped by to inspect the property. And I made sure to stop by often. Not to gloat. Not really. But to remind them of the terms. 3 weeks into his new role, Ryan asked for a meeting. He stood outside my office, knocking once, timid, like he wasn't sure he was allowed. I looked up from my laptop. "Come in." He sat across from me, posture too straight, hands folded tight. "I just wanted to say..." He hesitated. "Thank you? For giving me this job. For not turning your back completely." I studied him. There was no smirk this time. No swagger. Just the raw, tired face of a man who had run out of shortcuts. "You're not here because I'm generous," I said. "You're here because I believe in accountability." He nodded. "I get that. Do you?" I leaned forward. "Because I don't need you here. This business doesn't need you. You're here because I want you to learn what it's like to rebuild from nothing. The way I had to." His eyes dropped. "I deserve that." Silence stretched between us again. But this time, it wasn't heavy. It was honest. He stood to leave, but before he reached the door, I spoke again. "Do you remember that dinner?" I asked. He froze. "The night you called me a parasite. Everyone laughed. No one stopped you. His shoulders sagged. I remember. I nodded. Good. Don't ever forget it. He left without another word. The door clicked shut, and I stared out the window of my office at the skyline, my skyline now. The buildings I'd climbed in my own way, brick by brick, keyboard by keyboard. I didn't need revenge. I just needed them to understand what I already knew. Growth comes not from being believed in, but from what you do when no one believes in you at all. By month 2, something strange started happening. Ryan began arriving early, before anyone else. The same man who used to sleep until noon and joke about how real work was for people with small dreams was now brewing coffee and answering emails before the lights were even on in the office. He never complained, never asked for more, never even so much as glanced at the bigger offices across the hall. Mine included. At first, I assumed it was desperation. But as days turned to weeks, I noticed something else. He was changing. Not in the overcompensating, trying to be humble kind of way, but in the way people change when they finally start listening to themselves after years of listening to applause. He didn't talk much anymore. He wasn't networking, wasn't pitching, wasn't scheming. He just worked. One rainy Tuesday, I found him alone in the break room, staring at the vending machine like he didn't know what he wanted or maybe like he didn't deserve anything. I watched him for a moment before stepping in. "You look like you've seen a ghost," I said. He turned, startled. "Just remembering." I raised an eyebrow. "This vending machine," he said quietly. "Remember when I used to laugh at you for eating out of one of these? At that gas station near home?" I nodded, slow. "Yeah. I remember." He exhaled through his nose. "You ever just hate the version of yourself that everyone else seemed to love?" I didn't respond right away. Instead, I pressed the buttons, bought 2 bags of pretzels, and handed him one. "I know that guy," I said. "I used to wake up to his voice every day." He gave me a tired smile, and we sat in silence, crunching through the past. That night, I drove home, my real home, not the penthouse. I parked down the street from the house I now owned, windows dim, porch light flickering. I didn't go in. I just watched it. My parents still walked like they were the owners, still left garden tools scattered across the lawn like it was 1998, and Dad had just mowed the backyard. But there was something else now. Every time they saw me, they straightened up. Polite. Cautious. Like I was a landlord, not a son. And that's exactly how I treated them. They asked for no favors. I gave them none. They lived on borrowed time, 1 month at a time. I'd become the ghost of the child they never saw, now walking through the halls of their lives as a reminder. I didn't hate them. I didn't pity them. I just watched. Watched how fragile pride becomes when the pedestal breaks. And yet, somewhere in the quiet of that parked car, I also realized I didn't feel triumphant. I felt free. And that was enough. Spring brought a strange kind of stillness. My business was flourishing, new clients, more staff, talks of expanding into app development. I'd started mentoring a few up-and-coming freelancers, young kids who reminded me of myself, broke, hungry, and holding on to some sliver of belief that they could claw their way out of invisibility. One of them asked me once, "What was your turning point?" I didn't have a clean answer. Because the truth was, the turning point wasn't a single moment, it was a slow shedding. Of shame. Of needing approval. Of defining myself by the size of someone else's shadow. But something was still unfinished. It came to a head on a warm Sunday evening when my assistant Layla buzzed into my office. "Hey, your brother's outside. He didn't have an appointment." I told her to let him in. Ryan walked in wearing jeans and a windbreaker. No briefcase. No act. Just a folded letter in his hand. He looked around my office, floor-to-ceiling windows, the sleek black desk, the abstract paintings that were mostly just expensive noise, and then met my eyes. "This isn't a work visit," he said. I leaned back in my chair. "Go on." He held up the letter. "It's from Mom. I asked her to write it. Thought you deserved something, on paper." I didn't take it. I just watched him. "She wanted to say she was sorry." For the way she laughed. For not stopping me that night. I didn't blink. Did she say it to my face? She's not good at that. You know that. That's the problem, Ryan. Everyone in that house was always good at pretending things weren't happening. He looked down, folding the letter back. She's been sick. Nothing terminal, just, her body's not what it used to be. Dad's knees are shot. They don't say it, but they're scared. Of losing everything. They already did, I said. They lost me. The silence sat between us like a closing door. He nodded. I know. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was Dad's old watch, the one he wore every day until the business went south and he pawned it to cover a utility bill. I bought it back last week, Ryan said. It's yours. He wanted you to have it when you were 16. Mom said no. Said you didn't need something that nice? I took it without speaking. He turned to go, then hesitated. You ever think about coming home? He asked. Not just as the guy who owns the house. I mean, actually home? I thought about that. Really thought about it. And then I said, no. Home is something you earn. He nodded again. No bitterness. No fight. Just quiet acceptance. As he reached the door, I added, but if you ever want to build something that isn't built on guilt, you know where I am. He gave a small, grateful nod and left. That night, I sat on my balcony, watching the city flicker. I wore Dad's watch, not out of nostalgia, but to remind myself that value isn't about what others give you. It's what you take back when no one thinks you can. I haven't spoken to my parents much since that day. Ryan stayed on at the company, quiet, competent, never asking for more than he earned. We exist now in a strange kind of peace, not warm, not cold. Just balanced. The house? I still own it. They still live in it. The lease gets renewed every year, without discussion. I don't send reminders. They don't miss payments. That's the agreement. That's the distance we keep. People often ask if I forgave them. I didn't. I just moved on. Because sometimes, peace doesn't come from making things right, it comes from building something better in the space where everything broke. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: no one gets to decide your value but you. Not the golden child, not your family, not even the silence at the dinner table. You are not what they say in your absence. You are what you become in theirs.